Hello and welcome to Anime Memories, and on this episode, I'm going to be talking about living for the day after tomorrow. With the rise of online streaming sites like Crunchyroll, anime's been getting a lot more exposure since both mainstream and non-mainstream series are getting simulcasted. This allows even the most niche anime to gain a great amount of popularity. However, in the mid-2000s when online streaming was in its infancy, the only way to find these obscure kind of shows was to hear about them through word of mouth, so a lot of high quality series were flying under the radar. Living for the Day After Tomorrow was a perfect example. If it wasn't for a review that I found on the D2 Brigade website back in the day, I would have never come across it. I'm hoping that with this video, I can give a bit more publicity to a wonderful anime that's gone widely unnoticed. So, let's get into it. On the outskirts of a country town, a former university student named Shoko meets a young girl named Karada, and after a short conversation, they both decide to make wishes at a small shrine. Of course, they didn't really expect their wishes to be granted. It's like throwing money into a fountain. Nobody thinks those things actually work. But this did work. When they meet later that night, Shoko reverts back to being a child, while Karada now looks like a 20-something-year-old woman. The reason for this switch is that Karada asked the shrine to make her an adult so that she could be less of a burden on her older brother Hiro, who's been acting as her guardian. While their physical appearances might have changed, their minds are still the same, which is pretty much the only positive to this, because now they have to deal with the numerous implications of this wish coming true. It sucks to start off with a negative, but I found the first episode kinda dull. It's basically a long introduction to the characters and how they're related to each other with nothing much of interest happening. Although I think this may have been intentional, as this episode acts as a bit of a calm before the storm, since as soon as the transformations happen, there's this immediate sense of uneasiness. All these questions start popping up, like, how are they going to explain this to the people around them? How are they going to afford to pay for food and rent? Are either of them even employable in their current state? It seems like every minute a new problem arises. Even when some of these initial issues get figured out, they both still have lingering insecurities from before the wish took place, which further complicates things. And while all this chaos is swirling around, they also have to accept that this change may be permanent. They may never get their original bodies back. With all the melodrama and magical elements in the plot, this show could have easily gone off the rails and descended into full-blown lunacy, but the writers took care and made sure everything stayed reasonably close to reality. While the whole switching ages scenario is purely based in fantasy, the conflicts that are caused by that scenario seem really grounded. Most of the characters react in a way that mimics what I expect from real people if something like this actually happened. This must have been difficult to pull off, since the whole body swapping concept is very goofy. This is why most of the movies and TV shows that use body swapping as a plot device usually end up being comedies. However, because of the brilliant execution, they were able to keep this completely serious. And one of the main things that helped make the execution so good is the consistent pacing. It stays fairly relaxed throughout, giving you more than enough time to fully take in the severity of the situation. If I was to compare this to a modern anime, I would say that the story moves at a similar speed to Shougen Roku Rakugo Shinju. So it's slow, but it never becomes sluggish, it just keeps steadily flowing along. Now, before we move on, there's a small problem I feel I need to mention in order to be fair. In the third act, shortly before the ending, there are a few events that are a bit too convenient, and some of the conflicts are wrapped up easier than they should be. However, I can only remember 2 cases of this, so it's a minor flaw in what is overall a very well written story. Moving on to the characters, and while the supporting cast are great, there isn't a whole lot I can say about them, since their importance pales in comparison to the 2 leads. Almost all of the development and time is given to Karada and Shoko. Although the supporting cast all get their moments, and since there's only 12 episodes, I think it was a good decision to focus on getting the main characters right, rather than trying to shove in a bunch of side plots that end up going nowhere. Now, in terms of the 2 leads, I loved how their personalities and designs matched up with one of the main themes of the show, which is, when you're a kid, all you want to do is become an adult so that you can get more respect. And then when you become an adult, all you want to do is go back to your childhood when life was simpler. Kurita, despite wanting to be seen as mature, is very cute and childlike even in a grown-up form, while Shoko is overly jaded and often has a blank look on her face, like someone who's given up on the idea of being happy. As the show goes on though, they both change significantly as they iron out their insecurities and become more grateful for what they have. It was really heartwarming seeing these characters soften, overcome their difficulties, and become content with who they are. With Kurita specifically, I noticed pretty quickly that she was purposely designed to manipulate the audience into feeling sorry for her since she's small and has a lot of moe features. And by God is it effective! Even without the full context of this clip, you can see how easy it is to sympathise with her. Her sympathetic nature can also be seen in a flashback of when her and Hiro first started living together. I decided to call attention to this scene because it was able to teach me about her brother's selflessness as well as why she became motivated to grow up quickly without the need for any talking. There wasn't a single spoken word here. I'm not going to make out like this is some kind of groundbreaking achievement. I just really admire how this series used a lot of subtlety when explaining its characters' motivations. And this wasn't the only subtle scene. There were many parts where you wouldn't need any dialogue to tell you what was going on because you could just look at the characters, listen to the music, and you would just know. You'd know what these people were thinking and feeling. I love it when an anime uses all its elements, writing, sound and visuals, to tell the story. And speaking of visuals, I liked how they decided to go with light mellow colours and hand-drawn backgrounds. It helped to create a soothing atmosphere. I've seen some people criticise this artwork for being bland, but I would argue that they purposely used a toned-down colour palette in order to match the relaxed pacing. I don't think the show would have been as good if they tried to tell the same slow-moving story while using colours that are as bright as a Christmas tree. I also thought the animation was surprisingly good for what isn't a mainstream moneymaker. I rarely saw any choppiness and most of the movement was pretty smooth. The artist did a great job on what must have been a fairly small budget. So now we have the sound, and I'll start off this section by mentioning a phrase that I kept saying every time I heard a new piece of music, which was, wow, this song is exactly what needed to be played here. Not only are the compositions outstanding, but each track is played at the exact right moments. They do this by having quite a few long stints where there's nothing playing in the background at all, and instead, they rely mostly on the dialogue to keep the drama going. So when they actually did decide to play some music, it made everything feel so much more important. I honestly can't think of another anime that used its soundtrack this well. I was totally blown away. However, my praise isn't just limited to the music since the sound design as a whole is on point. They chose voice actors that fit each of the characters, and the sound effects provide the appropriate background noise for every setting that the show has. There wasn't a single piece of audio that felt out of place. The sound is by far the best aspect of this, and with how compelling the story and characters are, that's a big achievement. If it came out today, I believe that Living for the Day After Tomorrow would have gotten a decent following. As it is though, it hasn't even cracked the top 2000 on my anime list, and it's only got a score of 7.17, which might not seem that bad, but by today's standards it's incredibly low. While this isn't some kind of godly masterpiece that everybody needs to rush out and see, it deserves better than this. It deserves to be remembered as more than just some random anime that came out in 2006. If a slice of life drama with a little bit of magic thrown in sounds interesting to you, please give this a try, and if you end up loving it like I did, it's been licensed by Sentai Filmworks and the DVDs are available on Amazon for only $20. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you have any feedback, feel free to leave a comment, and if you want to see more, feel free to subscribe as well. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.